to another exciting episode of the Andre The Beast Crayton Show. Today is another exciting show. Today, we're going to talk with an attorney whose journey in this life is truly a journey. You talk about beast mindset, the things that she's done and things that she's overcome is truly that beast mindset. Let me introduce to the show Miss Cynthia Murphy, attorney at law. Welcome to the show, Cynthia.
Thank you for having me.
Let's get right down to it. We were sharing off camera your journey. Tell the viewers a little bit about Cynthia Murphy before we go deep into your life's journey.
Now or in the past?
Let's start right from the beginning with that remarkable. What was it like in your childhood? Let's start there.
Well, in my childhood, my mother was verbally, emotionally, and mentally abusive. My father used to say he'd have to throw his hat in the house to see if she was going to shoot at it first before he came in. I was a competitive swimmer, and I was training for the Olympics. I lived in Belleville, Illinois, and my coach was at Carondelet, which is part of St. Louis, about an hour away. Mm-hmm. And if my mother didn't think I was doing well enough, I'd have to listen to her berate me all the way home. So at 15, I quit. I just couldn't take it. I mean, you give up everything for that level of sports. I just couldn't take it anymore. And my father became withdrawn. My mother's 94. She's still alive. But anyway, my brother describes her as living next to a volcano, calm in between frequent eruptions. So she's still the same. When I turned 16 on my birthday, my father took me down to get my driver's license. When we walked in the door, my mother verbally attacked him again. He packed his bag and he left.
How bad was it? Was it more verbal drama in your house more than physical?
There was no physical abuse.
So it was all verbal?
Yeah, there was no way to satisfy my mother. It just no way to satisfy her about anything. Whatever it was, she'd find a way to criticize. I would never bring friends home from school because afterwards she would criticize them viciously.
What was your father like as you was going through this, getting ready for the Olympics? That's big. I know what it's like to train for to get ready to try to make the Olympic team and so forth. But where was your father at? Did he even step in when your mom was doing these things, or did he have his own issues that you guys had to say, pick my battles, so to speak?
I think what he did was withdraw. He just wasn't present anymore. When I was really young, he was, but as time went on, he became more and more withdrawn. We owned a business, and he would come home and eat and then read books. I mean, he just was really quite withdrawn that way. From he would do his duty, but he became withdrawn emotionally. I mean, I think he was pretty battered by that.
Do you know his family? Did you know what your grandparents were like on both sides, mom and dad side? Were they demonstrating the same type of behaviors? Were they close to their parents?
No, my mother's father died accidentally long before I was born, and her mother held me once as a baby, and she died. Oh. And on my father's side, my paternal grandfather adored me. He really was. And without that, I don't think I could have survived in my life. They say you have to have one person who's crazy about you, and that was Donald D. Murphy. And I think I was 9 when he passed away. And my paternal grandmother was withdrawn as well. She was very distant, so I didn't really know her. So
how did you continue to navigate? How did you continue to navigate through all this? You're 16 now. Now what happens? You quit the getting ready for the Olympics. That had to be heartbreaking because I know the determination that you had to put forth to get to there. What was the final straw did she really make you that upset that you was like, I'm done?
Well, keep this in mind. Let's say summertime, we would go to the outdoor pool at Shaw Park, and we would work out from 6 in the morning until noontime, nonstop, 6 hours a day.
Yeah.
And during school, I would go to a different trainer in the morning before school. And after school, my mother would be waiting for me and I would train after school. I mean, this is all absorbing. I had no time for friendships. I had no time for arts and music, which I love. I had no time for anything else. It takes a full and complete sacrifice. But if you're not being appreciated at home for the sacrifice and instead you're being criticized for not sacrificing enough, there does come a breaking point where you realize you've given it all that you can give and you can never satisfy, well, in my case, my mother. I could never satisfy her and I couldn't do more. You can do so much, right? But you can't do more. I mean, I'm talking 11, 12, 13, 14 years old. I mean, how many 12, 13, 14-year-olds do you know who work out 6 hours a day?
Right. Right.
That was me. And then have to face the criticism and the denigration verbally of your mother all the way home because she doesn't think you're working hard enough.
So
She wasn't out there working. So
when did
that
you
was
decide to leave? When did you decide
Oh,
to
well,
make a move?
I think it was maturity. You know, at 15, I was mature enough to stand up and say, I'm not taking this anymore. At 11 or 12 or 13, I'm sure I was still trying to please my mother in this and everyone else. But
Right.
at 15, it was like, I really don't care anymore to please you. I'm not doing it.
Did you
Enough.
have a support group to go to when you decided to make this
I
voice?
did not. I
So what
did
do you
not.
do?
Well, I was pretty lonely and depressed in my year that I turned 15. I used to, basically sit by myself under a tree and really feel sorry for myself. This was before my parents split up. I was quite depressed and feeling sorry for myself because of where I was.
Mhm.
And then, it didn't get better after that because my parents split up and then they made it clear they didn't want me. And I was 16.
How do they
I
make
was
it clear
barely
they didn't want you? Did they verbally tell you they don't want you?
Yes. It was on my 16th birthday, so I'm barely 16. I chose to live with my dad, and then he met somebody, and he stayed in the house, and my mother moved on. And we had this intercom in the house. She would feed him her father was a medical doctor, and she would get drug samples from him, and then she would feed him alcohol and they would call me up on the intercom, Cynthia, come to the bedroom. And I'd come up and they'd be nude in bed with the sheets pulled up. He would offer me $200 to leave the house right now.
Why?
The why you can never answer. And I mean, even then, at my age, I looked at him and said, you got to be kidding. You really think I'd take $200 and leave? So then I found out that they hired a private investigator to try to catch me in wrongdoing so they could have an excuse to kick me out. I'm surprised they didn't find anything wrong. I was certainly not an angel, but not. And finally, he rifled through my purse, found my birth control pills, and he kicked me out over that. And I was like, really? I thought you'd be happy I'm not going to get pregnant as a teenager. But that was his excuse. He was looking for an excuse. So I went to my mother who said, well, you chose him over me and I don't want you. You can stay here a little while and then you're gone. So I went and lived in communes. I lived in a commune in St. Louis and I put myself through 1 year of St. Louis University. And then I got on my bicycle and I left. I was working at the American Automobile Society. I was doing association. I was doing these, in those days they called them triptychs, right? They were books that had pieces of maps in it. And there were two places I wanted to go. One was Australia and I couldn't afford that one. And the other was Canada. And I could get on my bike and ride to Canada. So I did.
Hold down before you tell that story to Canada.
What's this again?
I said, hold down for a minute before you tell that story on Canada. I'm taking all this in because people need to understand this is live. I mean, this isn't rehearsed. I'm just finding out this information. So your parents tried one, they was dysfunctional clearly. When you
Right.
decided to leave and he kept putting you out and you told your mom he put you out and all these other things, what was your mom's take? And I mean, I can't even fathom you being a female and saying, get out of my house and go figure life out. I mean, did you share this with anybody? Did you have any type of support group whatsoever you can go to?
I did not. I had no support group, but I was a hippie. And in the commune, that was my support group. But of course, it was full of drugs. And, like every time you walk in, they're handing out drugs and so forth and so on. I didn't want to stay in that subculture. I mean, it wasn't the idea of being a hippie, but I didn't want to stay in drug culture. So I wanted to get out. And a big impetus for me was while I was away, because I was always working. I
Mhm.
worked in the family business when I was 12 or 13 years old. I wanted to take it over. And
Mhm.
my dad said, no, you're not. Your brother's going to take it over. And he said, no, I'm not. But it still wasn't in the works for me because my dad wasn't going to let a girl take over the family business. So I was always working. And when I was 14, 15, I was a lifeguard and I was teaching swimming. And when I was at St. Louis, Missouri, I was working at the American Automobile Association. I have always worked. I'm 69. I'm still working.
Where
I
was
have
your brother at during all of this confusion and them putting you out of the house? Where would your brother stay? Did they keep him and
Oh
with
yeah. Oh yeah. They kept him. They fought over him. My dad let him live with him while he put him through college. My dad helped get him his job in his chosen field. Um, yeah. My parents wanted my brother. They didn't want me. I kind of figured this. My brother is a person. I adore him. Don't get me wrong. He knows I adore him, right?
Right.
And I don't think he got the best deal out of this. It may sound like he got the best deal, but
I
I
was
don't think
getting ready to say it sounds like it. Why you say he didn't?
he's had to put up with them all these years.
Oh, okay, okay, I
I
got you.
Yeah, he's had to put up with it. And my dad finally his second marriage ended. He ended up being an alcoholic and he had financial problems. So my brother had to help him. And my mother's having problems. My brother goes down. He has to put up with all this. I really think he got the worst deal out of it. But he was like this. My parents would say to him, his name is Bob. They say, Bob, go do whatever. And he'd say, okay, fine. And he'd go out and do the opposite. And they didn't care. And
Hmm.
they would say, Cynthia, go do something, whatever it was. I'd say, why would anyone do something as stupid as that?
Mhm.
And they looked at me like I'm a demon child because I am forthright in my communication. And I'm not going to say yes and then go out and do the opposite. It just isn't me. It's never been me. It still isn't me. And I will say my truth, even though people don't like it. So my brother just kept his head down. He just kept a low profile as he always does. And now I look back on it, I mean, I had years, maybe 10 years where I grieved over how I was treated. But now I look back and I look at that and say, I really was privileged. I mean, how many young people at that age have self-determination? Not
Hold,
many.
hold that thought. Speaking of self-determination, your journey still continues. You do
Yes.
something that I told you that is crazy. You get a bicycle. Now what happened?
Well, I had a bicycle and I bought this special bicycle. In those days, it was special. It was a 15-speed Jetane traveling bicycle. So it was made for touring. And I rode it everywhere. So I talked to the guy who sold me the bike, and he told me he rode his bicycle to Alaska. I said, oh, wonderful. Tell me how you did this. So he told me how he did it, and he told me how to pack for it. For my trip, you make 3 piles. Pile 1 is absolutely essential. You can't live without. Pile 2 is what you'd really like to take with you, and pile 3 is extra. And you get rid of piles 2 and 3 and only keep pile 1. So that's what I did. And, I didn't tell my parents I was getting ready for this, but shortly before I left, at the end of the school term, I came back to the commune and had found out that some guys with sawed-off shotguns showed up, threatened violence, and stole, the stash that the roommates were dealing. They were dealing pot, right? They were dealing pot, and then right after that, I got a phone call from someone saying, "You don't know me, but I know you, and I want to set you up in dealing." And at that point, I went, "You know what? I got to leave tomorrow. I don't want to be part of this. I'm leaving." So
Now,
I did.
how
So
old were
I
you?
left.
How old were you when all this is taking place?
I would have by then. I would have been 18.
So you're 18 years old, and now you're getting ready to go on an excursion all the way to Canada on a 13, 15 speed bicycle, which I've never heard of. Take us
Yeah.
down there. Take us down there. First of all, how do you do it? Because you're a female, you're young. What were you scared? I mean, or were you that adventurous that fear was no longer an option for you now? Now it was just enjoying life.
I was petrified the first 2 nights I was sleeping outside. I think part of that was I watched too many horror movies, and I had this feeling like the blob monster was going to come out of the bushes, or some other thing, or some rapist was going to find me in the middle of the woods. And, as time went on, what I really discovered was most people are decent and kind. I
Hmm.
know there are people who aren't, but in my experience on that trip, I would look up and I would see it's going to rain. And inevitably, someone would run up to me and say, "Who are you? Where are you going? If you were my daughter, I'd want someone to take you in."
Mhm.
They'd take me in. I think I mentioned to you before, one couple took me to their cabin on the lake. I went to water skiing. I ran into a traveling carnival. I spent a couple nights with carnies. That was an interesting subculture. And then I went up to see a friend in Gary, Indiana. And then I was going around Chicago, and I couldn't make it all the way around Chicago. So a stranger told me that a convent would take me in, and they did. So I was with the nuns for a night. And then I took the ferry across to Mackinac Island. And while I was there, some guy said he had a camp in the bushes. Come stay a couple of nights. You're not really allowed to there, but I did anyway. And then right before I crossed through St. Marie into Canada, by then I had a tan. I might be a redhead, but I'm dark Irish, so I do get a tan.
Okay.
And there was a powwow, and they thought I was indigenous and invited me to the powwow, but I said no. I wanted to cross the border right away, so I crossed the border. I was immediately disappointed because, in my Americentric belief, I thought everyone spoke French in Canada. They don't. Not that many people speak French in Canada. So
Right.
I discovered something new, and I found out there was a youth hostel in Sudbury, so I went up there. My bike, the gears were worn out. I couldn't really get parts, so I shipped it back and stayed a few weeks at the youth hostel. In those days, that was 1973, people were hitchhiking back and forth Canada. So I hooked up with a German national and hitchhiked to Halifax. So I had to do my laundry. So I went to a laundromat, and then I met Carlos from Kentucky, who was a draft dodger who grew up not far from where I grew up. I mean, the world is pretty small. And so he lived in a commune. So I went to the commune. I had a room in the commune, and there was a heavily pregnant woman who said, "Take my job." So I took her job. So I had a place to live. I had a source of income. And I looked back at Illinois and St. Louis, Missouri. I went, there's no reason for me to go back. None whatsoever.
You
There
didn't
was
think
nothing
about your
there.
family. You didn't think about your family. They didn't try to reach out to you at all. Nobody was concerned about your journey. You're a
They call
female.
me a traitor to my country. And apparently my mother's sister wrote her representative and told them they should eliminate my citizenship.
Maybe riding that bicycle might have been the best journey you probably have ever taken in your life. So now you're in Canada. How do you how do you how do you move on? That no matter how you look at it, you said a word when we first started. You got to at least have that one person in your life that loves you.
Yes.
If not, you're just spinning. Do you ever find that one or what you might have thought might have been that one love? You're in Canada now. Now what happens?
Well, I mean, living in a commune is a sense of community.
Hmm.
I don't feel that it's genuine, in the emotional part, but it is a sense of community. And I ultimately met the father of my children there. I became a Christian, committed Christian. He was already. So we got married and we had 4 kids together. But after about 2 years, he started to hit me. He didn't do it before. He started to hit me. And of course, as these things go, they weren't very frequent, maybe once, twice a year, but they get worse every time.
Hmm.
And I did try to leave him right after the third child was born, but he got me back. And, we moved around a lot and we go to the pastors and they would say, well, you can't leave him for this. The Bible doesn't allow you to leave him for this. You have to be a better wife. So, it was a really difficult decision for me because I knew when I left him, I'm leaving the church. Simple.
Yeah, did you, that sounds very hypocritical. You need to be a better wife. You got 4 kids. You're married. What did they consider you not being good at?
You know what? They never explained it. It's just one of those, pat answers that people throw out because they don't know what else to say. I'd have a black eye. I'd have bruises on my neck from being choked. And they'd still say, no, the Bible doesn't say you can leave him for that. Can only leave him if he commits adultery or he's not a Christian anymore. Those are the only 2 reasons.
So you
So
broke in with bruises and stuff. Was it okay to call law enforcement, the legal team, leave? Most people would say once you seen it the first time, you see it the second time, even though it's 2 years or several years apart. You see it and you say it gets worse. But I get it. You're in the church. When does your safety and the safety of your kids become the primary factor here, as opposed to trying to save the marriage in an abusive situation that's affecting not only your mental state, but your kids are hopefully seeing it or not seeing it, but people clearly see it because you're going into the church. When does the light come on for you to say enough?
well, in those days, my kids were born between 75 and 81. And in those days, they didn't charge people.
What?
You
In
know,
Canada?
they didn't charge, and there were no safe homes for women. They didn't have any safe places to go. And that has all evolved since then. So in those days, there was nothing.
Mhm.
But where it changed for me is he brought me to British Columbia I think he thought if he got me away from everybody, that he could control me. And our kids are 1, 3, 5, and 7 years old at that time. We're moving into this place, and it had 2 separate spots. Downstairs was for living, and upstairs he was using as an office. And to get that, you had to go outside and enter. There was no staircase or entry. So this man living next door to us, it was in the country, it was way in the country in isolated places on the Kootenai Lake. And this man next door, complete stranger, comes to me, knocks on the door and says, I'm worried about you. I said, why are you worried about me? Well, I'm helping your husband move his stuff in, his books upstairs, and he's talking about killing you. I
What?
said, well, yeah, a complete stranger. And, I said, well, we've been married a long time. I mean, maybe he's just saying, gee, I'd like to strangle her or something. We say that. He says, no, I'm really worried about you. I want you to know I'm right next door. So now it's like, this is really weird. So it wasn't a day or two later. See, now this would have been 1982, maybe the beginning of 83. And they were starting to charge people then, right, for doing this stuff. And he came in and started to aggress against me. And I said, look, you are never going to hit me again. Let's be clear about this. And the police here will charge you, unlike other places we've lived. I've looked into this. I will not let this go. Don't do it. And then he said to me, you're not going to live to do that. I'm going to take a baseball bat I'm going to bash your head in and spread your brains all over the walls. So I said to him, that would be not so smart to do. You'll be in
Did you
jail.
take him seriously? Did you take him seriously on that?
Not yet. I said, that wouldn't be very smart to do. I'll be dead. You'll be in jail. The kids would be in foster care. I don't care. And he repeated the same threat. Then he went to the living room and he sat down on the sofa, put his head in his hands and started crying. And I went out there and said, why are you crying? And he said, I scared myself. And that was the minute I knew he'd do it. And the very next day, I got a lawyer. He went for an emergency application. I got exclusive possession of the home, and the police came and escorted him out. It was that fast.
Kudos. But when they escorted him out, you shared a revealing moment here. He realized he had a problem, so to speak. Did he get help for it, or what?
No, he married at least 3 times after that, and I know from at least 2 of them that he continued to do it, but they were down in the States, which I still think they weren't charging people yet where he was. But British Columbia they can be, somewhat ahead of the curve. So no, I don't think he's dead now. I don't think he ever got help. No.
Hindsight is 2020. And I know it's hypothetically, but what do you think? I know the mind can transcend time. We can't always predict it, but do you think he would have carried through with his actions had you stayed?
Yes. When he sat on the sofa and cried, I knew he'd carry through and he'd be sorry he did it. He scared himself because he knew he'd do it. All it would take would be the right trigger and he would do it because it was in his mind. The neighbor saw, in fact, that night when he had to leave the home, that neighbor came over because he didn't own the place next door. He was just helping an old guy out. He came over and stayed with me with his shotgun. He stayed with me to make sure I was safe.
How do you move on now? He's no longer in the picture. How do you move on with your life?
Well, I was living in the country and there wasn't much I could do because I have 4 kids. But the guy who I ended up getting involved with him, who came over to protect me, he taught me how to, I raised goats. I had 3 milkers. I made cheese from the milk. My kids had lots of goat milk. I raised 2 pigs. I'd get help to butcher them. I'd sell some of the meat. I'd raise a couple dozen turkeys. I'd sell half of them off. I raised chickens. We had eggs. So even though I had to go on welfare at that time, we did really well. We did. And there was an old couple in the town. They were an old couple, George and Betty. They're both passed now. And they said to me when my marriage ended, they said, look, we grew up in the 30s and we can tell you kids only need 3 things. And I still say this today. 1, they need one parent who's crazy about them. Only one. They're not going to need their dad. 2, they need a safe place to sleep at night. And 3, they need enough food to eat because kids who are hungry feel like they're poor. They don't need nice clothes. In our day, we didn't even have shoes. But as long as they have one person, safe place, and enough food to eat, your kids will feel like they're rich. And many years later, my kids went back to where we lived there on the Kootenai Lake, and they came back to me and said, Mom, were we really that poor? I didn't think we were. I said, well, you didn't think you were because you had enough food to eat.
Now, that I can see that it's turned out to be a beautiful story. You're a lawyer. When did that take place in your life?
Well, I did marry again, and his little boy from a previous relationship died. And after about 5 years of being married, he turned to cocaine. I turned him into a mean, ugly person. And I said to him, and my kids were about adolescents, just coming into teenagers. And I said to him, look, if you're going to go down cocaine highway, I cannot go with you. I'll have 4 more problems on my hand. Mm-hmm. And he refused to do it. And he used to say I was the love of his life. And I think I was until Lady Cocaine came along. Mm-hmm. So he was a high income earner. And after we split up, he did everything to destroy me. And I saw some family law lawyers acting really badly. And I looked at them and said, if those yahoos can be lawyers, so can I. And that was it. It was part of, revenge is the best success scenario. And I got to tell you, after I graduated from law school, for years, I got a lot of pleasure walking into courtrooms and seeing those same lawyers blanch when they saw me walk in. I got to tell you, I'm not going to lie.
Being a lawyer right now, and it's funny because a lot of our traumas, disappointments, whatever you want to call it in life, usually pave the way for the greater good if we learn from that and learn to forgive and so forth. But clearly you've done that. You've now become a family lawyer. What do you do differently when you're in court and you're dealing with a family case and it's somewhat similar to yours? Because you can naturally relate. You can sniff
Yes.
out the bullshit. You can sniff out the real. What do you bring different to a case when you're in family law court?
Well, the one thing I have is I always have this forthright communication. It was probably the one thing my family didn't like about me, but I still have it. Another thing is I can relate to people. Yeah, I've been where you are. I know what it's like. And I talk to people about, being accountable. I've done a lot of child welfare too. And I talk to people about being accountable, about showing up. 75% of life is showing up. Make sure you're there. Harass the social workers for more visits. I had one the other day. They weren't giving her visits with her child who's not even a year old. I said, harass them. Call him every single day. Call him every single day. I want you to call him and make a real pest of yourself. She did. And now all of a sudden they're giving her visits. They're going to do them in the community. They're moving them into her home. I mean, it made a huge difference. And I can relate to it. I'm not shy about telling people that I was in an abusive relationship. I'm not shy about these things. And, anger, when people are angry, and they often are in family law and in child welfare, everyone's afraid of anger. I'm not afraid of people's anger. Anger is an energy you can work with.
Mhm.
Hopelessness or helplessness is difficult to motivate people who are feeling helpless and hopeless. But if they're angry, that's an energy you can work with to get them to do something, what they have to do. I prefer the angry person over the helpless person myself. But a lot of social workers dealing with parents, when they apprehend their children, if the parents show anger, they just want to criticize them. And I'm the first one to say, I'd rather have them angry. So don't tell me they shouldn't be angry. Absolutely, they should be angry.
What do you think needs to change
In
with just family in general to avoid family court, avoid going through what you've been through? You've been in it, you're now in the legal aspect of it. What do you think needs to change in general with us as a structure in America and throughout the world?
Well, I think things have mostly changed. I mean, men who are women, individuals who verbally and physically abuse others are now being held accountable. They're being charged. There was a case, I think it was in the 80s, involving the Torrington Police Department, because there was a woman who had a restraining order and the police would not do anything. They had an administrative classification where they would respond to a stranger assault, but they wouldn't respond to domestic assaults. It was an administrative classification. And this woman ended up being a quadriplegic because her abusive husband stomped on her back in front of police, and they didn't lift a finger. So she sued the city and got some millions of dollars because now she's quadriplegic. And that case from the US caused the police departments all over North America, I'm pretty sure even in Canada, to reassess their liability if they were responding to domestic violence differently than stranger violence, because it is discrimination. It is discrimination. You need to respond to them both, but at the same level. And I do believe that particular case changed it. That was before I became a lawyer. I became aware of that case. I think we have to continue to do that. We have to provide programming for people who abuse. I mean, you know, the father of my children, his dad used to beat them up. I mean, this was generational, right? He never thought he'd be like that. He never wanted to be like his dad. But, you know, when you reach a certain age, usually about mid-30s to 40s, and you've got the stresses, you have a mortgage, maybe a car payment, you have the family, you have to deal with family, you know, you have to deal with all this stuff, making a living, and things maybe aren't going well today. And we have to watch ourselves because we tend to lash out like our parents did, like what we saw in our family. And that may not be the most wise decision. So people becoming aware of that and recognizing it when they see it and getting help so that they find new ways of reacting to these things is really important. I mean, for myself, I left home so early that I began to forge my own way, which wasn't very good. I mean, I did pick a man who ended up being abusive, and I did go to some counseling for that and recognize that, yeah, it was probably because, you know, we are comfortable with what we know.
Mhm.
And if what we know is abuse, like from my mother, then you're comfortable. I mean, my husband was overly critical before he became physically abusive, like my mother, because, well, we're comfortable. We can deal with that. The unknown is more difficult to deal with. So I think what's really important is to embrace the absolute unknown. Like if you want your inner beast to grow, you've got to embrace the scary unknown. You know, if it makes you afraid, grit your teeth and do it, because it's probably the best thing.
Before we wrap up, first of all, thank you so much for coming on and sharing this truly impactful story of courage beyond compare, because a lot of people could not do that at that age. And being a female on top of that, my hat's off to you for doing that. My hat's off to you again for going after that law degree and making a difference in family law from using your own personal experiences into the journey and bringing it into the courtroom. Leave the viewers with something positive before we wrap up today's show.
Well, I would say realize in your darkest moments, when everything's against you, that it's just a stepping stone to something better. It's just a stepping stone. It is not the end. It's not the end of you. It is not the end for you. It is only the beginning. These challenges, in my experience, have always developed character. We might hate it. We're in the middle of it. I hate it when I'm in the middle of it myself. But when you come out the other side and you use it as a stepping stone, you realize it was really good for you and it helped you to go to a higher level. The important thing is to make healthy choices. When my parents kicked me out, I had an offer to become a prostitute, a high-end prostitute in hotels. I could have said yes to that, but I said no, because that wasn't a healthy choice for me. I could have become a drug dealer in St. Louis. Someone was willing to set me up. I said no, that wasn't a healthy choice for me. I think people inherently know what is a healthy choice as compared to an unhealthy choice. And although that healthy choice may be an uncomfortable one and scary as hell, grit your teeth and do it, because it's probably the best thing for you. I can almost guarantee that.
Ladies and gentlemen, this has been another exciting episode of the Andre the Beast Crayton show.
Thank you for having me.